Mrs. Grenet-Catalano, first of all, I would like to thank you for this interview at Cyprus Broadcasting Corporation. France celebrates on July 14th its National Day. It's a symbolic day for unity, democracy, human and civil rights.
Yes, you're right. Kalispera, first of all. I'm very happy to be with you today. Yes, the 14th of July is a very special and very dear day, a symbolic day to the French people. We are commemorating the seizure of the Bastille prison on the 14th of July 1789. And it was the symbol of the abolition of the monarch's arbitrary rule. And so very soon after, the privileges were abolished. A declaration on the rights of the human being and the citizen was adopted, proclaimed. And this declaration inspired the UN Charter on Human Rights, but also many other constitutions in the world. Allow me to wish a wonderful 14 Juillet to all the French people living in Cyprus.
During the last few weeks, we have seen a severe unrest in France. Social and economic problems and racism have deep roots leading to these riots, and for countries like France, is it time for a new and more effective migrant integration policy?
I can imagine that those images of looting, rioting were very worrying for Cypriots watching TV. But I think we should not draw hasty conclusions about what happened in France. First of all, the order has been restored, so the calm is back now. So what happened is that a young 17-year-old teenager was shot dead by a policeman. So we don't know yet the exact circumstances of the event. So the policeman is behind bars, he's under investigation, and so let the justice tell the responsibilities and what happened exactly. It was a drama, it was very tragic. But what is condemnable is that some people instrumentalize this event, this drama, in order to steer unrest and violence, and pure violence. So it's totally condemnable. Now, of course, we need to think about the root causes of those events and to try to address those root causes. But I think they are more social than ethnic, because all the rioters, most of the rioters, they are French, they are not foreigners.
Bilateral relations between France and Cyprus entering a new era the last years, especially in the fields of defense and security. What can we expect regarding the cooperation of the two countries? For example, in which field France is giving its focus?
I know, you're right that our relationship is really excellent. I'm very happy because it's based on trust and friendship, and it's growing, it's furthering every day. So in matters of defense, we have a new defense cooperation agreement which entered into force in 2020. So we are building on this agreement in order to expand the fields of our cooperation, military cooperation. Our military ships call very often in your ports. Some Rafale aircrafts operating in the Eastern Mediterranean region organize exercises with Cyprus. So we are very happy, very grateful to Cyprus for this hospitality. And a very important multinational exercise will take place in September. It's called ENOMIA. It involves Cyprus, Greece, Italy, and France. And France will be in command of this exercise, and it's very important in order to reinforce interoperability between our forces.
For example, Cyprus government wants to replace Russian arms and equipment, and it's an area which we can see, for example, some arm exports from France to Cyprus.
You may know that last year we signed a very important agreement to provide new helicopters from Airbus helicopters to Cyprus. And nowadays and in the future, we are in constant contact with the authorities in order to see whether France can support the modernization of the Cypriot National Guard. But our bilateral relationship doesn't end there. because I know that the defense sector is very important, but we are very proud of the progress that we have achieved in matters of education. The French Cypriot school now has more than 400 kids registered for the September 2023. We opened a new branch in Limassol. Now we have 22 kids registered for September. And last but not least, the French universities are more and more popular. And there is a point that I would like to underline. It's you don't need to speak French to go and study in France. This is very important. We have a lot of English-speaking curricula. And the students, the kids, they will learn French in their daily lives. So it's very important. And the last word maybe on the economy. It was maybe a weak point in the past few years, but day by day I see things evolving in a very positive sense. Of course, we have the big companies such as Total, Bouygues, and Aegis in the airports, Hermes Airports Consortium, which have a durable foothold here in Cyprus. But more and more retail brands now are opening. And the direct flights that we have between France and Cyprus now are very helpful. And we have also more and more French tourists coming in Cyprus.
The new president of Cyprus, Mr. Christodoulidis, suggests a new proposal, a new approach on the Cyprus problem, a more active role of the European Union, an appointment of an envoy, and an interaction between the progress on the negotiations for the Cyprus problem and on some chapters of Turkey's negotiations with the EU for its accession. How do you comment on this proposal, and is Paris supportive of this?
Generally speaking, France, as a member of the UN, permanent member of the UN Security Council, and as a European member state, has always been very supportive of any kind of positive, constructive initiative. So President Christodoulidis, since his election has set as a priority to deploy efforts in order to break the deadlock and to go back to the table of negotiations. Of course, we are very supportive of this initiative, and President Macron told him that when President Christodoulidis paid a visit to Paris in May, beginning of May. The Cyprus problem is a European problem. So therefore, of course, the European Union could indeed play a positive role in order to support what is a UN-led process. So in the last European Council conclusions, you can find the affirmation that the European Union stands ready to use all the tools at its disposal in order to support this process. We are not dealing with the Cyprus problem in a vacuum. So of course, the EU-Turkey relationship has its own dynamic, and Turkey has to meet specific criteria in its dialogue with the European Union. But it's obvious that if the EU-Turkey relationship is evolving in a positive way, it will benefit the resolution of the Cyprus problem, and vice versa. If the situation on the ground here is more positive, it will have a positive impact on the EU-Turkey relationship. But let me just add something that you can have incentives at the European level, but if nothing is done on the ground between Cypriots, it will be very hard for the European Union to support a process. So first of all, you cannot set impossible conditions to go back to the table of negotiations. And by saying that, I have in mind, of course, the Turkish Cypriot position. Because asking for the recognition of the equal sovereignty as a prerequisite to go back to the table of negotiations, not only it's contrary to the UN Security Council resolutions, which call for a reunification and for a federal power sharing system, but it's also as if you ask your partner, your interlocutor, to recognize what you want from the very beginning. So what are they going to negotiate? So we need to encourage them to go back to a more realistic position, a more forward-looking position, and I think in that sense, it's very important to try to overcome the deep mistrust that exists nowadays between the two sides. And President Christodoulidis hit the mark when he announced that he is ready to take some measures in favor of the Turkish Cypriot citizens in order to bridge this gap and to try to bridge this mistrust. So I think it's very important. It's a positive and a very necessary step. The sooner, the bolder, the better. And it will also ease the involvement and the commitment of the UN, of the European institutions, the European member states, and let's hope so Turkey. It will convince them that this time will be different.
Everybody says, or many says, that the key of the solution is in Ankara. How can we expect that Turkey will be more willing to solve the Cyprus problem?
We can try. We can try, and President Christodoulidis wants to try, and we will accompany this movement. We'll see. It's up to Turkey to decide what its final position is. But I think we can all try.
Is the Mediterranean an area of interest for France, and Cyprus invests in regional synergies focused on the perspective of energy cooperation? For example, for a pipeline from Cyprus and Israel's exclusive economic zones to an LNG facility in Cyprus, from where liquefied gas could be exported to Europe. What is Paris' position on these plans, having in mind that also we have French companies with interest in Cyprus' exclusive economic zone?
Energy is a very important factor in the region, and we hope that it could be a source of cooperation much more than a source of tensions. So we know that there are a lot of tensions around energy, but there are a lot of tensions around energy also because of the maritime borders, which are not defined. And it's a pity because it's a lose-lose situation for everybody in the region. And so there are very easy ways to settle this issue according to international law. We have seen Israel and Lebanon, they managed to reach an agreement, and they are not the best friends in the world. So it's possible if there is a will. That said, of course, France is interested into a stability and the diversification of the energy sources for the European Union, but also for Cyprus. And the policy, the strategy of the new government, it's to try to reduce the prices, it's to try to explore, to exploit your resources in the economic exclusive zone. So this is, it makes sense in a way. I don't want to comment on specific projects because I'm not a specialist, but anything that could lead to more interconnectivity, to more cooperation. And France is part of the East Med Gas Forum. You mentioned Total Energy, the big company, French company, which is involved in the exploration of in the EEZ. So all that could lead to very positive developments, but the project needs to be realistic in order to provide for benefits in a realistic time frame. Because the use of gas resources, for instance, it's good, but it can only be a transition to green energy.
Which is or which should be the role of France in this area? In terms of stability, for example.
In general,
yes,
you mean? In general, of course, it's very important for us, and we have very good contacts with all the neighboring countries, and we know very well the region. So our military is present also in order to show our will to preserve the stability in the region. And so our interest is really, really deep into the stability of the region, and we'll do our best in order to help and to foster solutions to crisis and stabilization of the area.
After Russian invasion in Ukraine, Europe's response was, and is until today, sanctions against Russia. But the side effects, not only from the war, but also from the sanctions, hit the European countries. For example, energy prices are very high, and we also have more high cost of living, interest rates and inflation shock the economies and citizens. Does the EU need to review its policies and ways of reaction?
Today, we are the Ukrainians are fighting, have been fighting for almost 500 days. So let me say first of all that we need to provide them with all the support they need until the victory. This is the European position, and Cyprus is part of this policy because Cyprus has elaborated and decided those sanctions. You have welcomed Ukrainian refugees, you have provided humanitarian aid, training in demining, so Cyprus has done a lot, and we are very appreciative of that. You mentioned the inflation, the rise of prices, energy prices, of food prices.
The cost of living, everything in Europe.
Don't you think that it's more linked to the war than to the sanctions? We are convinced of that. For instance, we haven't sanctioned the grain, the Russian grain exports. We haven't sanctioned that. But the price of grain and the price of food is very high because the Russians, they are preventing Ukraine from exporting or from producing grain, and, as it was the case in the past. In a field of energy, we need to rush and to run into the green transition because the price of energy is high also because we use fossil fuels. And on the other side, we need to fight against the circumvention of the sanctions because there are still people or individuals or entities who are still doing business with Russian entities linked to Putin's regime. And this is what is really affecting the efficiency of the sanctions.
During the last years, we are witnessing problems in the process to adopt a common European stance in major issues, for example, illegal migration. At the end, different priorities and needs of the member states prevail.
It's the European challenge. We need to match the European common interest and individual member states' interests. So it's a matter of compromise. We always need to negotiate to find the right balance between those two interests. But I'm convinced that we are doing better together than individually. Look at COVID, we would never have tackled this crisis if we haven't been together. And it's the same for migration. No country can deal with this big problem and challenge alone. Concretely, on the ground, Cyprus already benefits from European help. Funds by the Commission, the different agencies, European agencies involved in tackling the migration issue, Frontex, and France, as some member states, we have selected Cyprus as a point of application of our voluntary, what we call the voluntary solidarity mechanism. So that means that France is taking some asylum seekers from Cyprus to France. And so Cyprus is now the top country in this mechanism, in this program. And I think it shows our solidarity, concrete solidarity.
And Cyprus needs solidarity.
Yes, and you have it. You can rely on it and you can count on the French solidarity and help in all fields.
Mrs. Grenet-Catalano, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.